I'm Michelle Watterson, the Karate Hottie, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
This is Filthy Rich. You're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Will Brooks, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
This is Victor Spot Virgin.
I'm Lance Hardy Palmer.
You're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Ib, the E.T. Ting, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Yo, this is Dan, the Hangman Hooker, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Did you hear the one about me being a drunk? Did you hear the one about me losing my nerve?
Hey, fight fans, welcome back to another edition of Stand and Bang Radio. I'm your host, Aaron Robbins, and co-hosting with me tonight is Mark Modeski.
Hey, how you doing, everybody?
And UFC fighter Leslie Smith. Leslie, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
All right, and our special guest this evening is the one and only Bas Rutten. Bas, thanks for taking time for us.
I'm doing great. So the peacemaker is here to keep the peace, I guess.
Yeah, Leslie's here to keep you in line.
Nice.
If it's all right with everybody, we're going to go ahead and stick with standard format and start with relevant MMA news. This week it was announced that RFA is going to do a crossover promotion with Legacy. And since we have the man from Access TV, I wanted to get Bas's idea on these kind of crossovers. Is this a good idea? Why did it take so long? And what divisions do you think, or what organizations do you think would line up the best in a crossover situation, Bas?
Well, first of all, the reason the other ones are not doing it is because everybody has an ego and they want their show to win, of course. There's always a big chance that one of them is going to lose the glow. It's like a super fight. You know, you put a super fight, and even if it's at a catch weight, still, if it's between two world champions in a different weight class, they come meet in a catch weight, still the person who loses, even though he's not going to lose his belt, has a little bit of glow, has less glow than the guy who's going to win. And it's the same with organizations. You know, you're taking a little bit of a risk there, because now the other one can say, well, we're better than them. Now, if this keeps continuing, that will fix the problem right away. If they say, okay, let's do this 2 times a year, or maybe 1 time a year, it doesn't really matter. But if it's a continuous thing, you know, then the other ones have, of course, the chance to make up again if they lost. I hear they have 5 fights, so they're going to need to win 3 out of 5. That's not as bad. So if you would have 1 fight, that would have been worse. Now, in the past, we already talked about it, because we would like UFC and Pride. We always thought that. You know, we had Chuck coming to Pride at that time. You know, and then he lost against Quinton. And you see, but that's already, he was getting up in his career. It's probably not going to be as good for the UFC at that moment than it is for Pride, of course, because then people are going to say, see, I always said that Pride was better. But then when Pride came to the UFC, the entire organization got bought over. A lot of these guys started losing in the UFC, and that kind of balanced it out again, I guess.
Okay, so what you're saying is not only could it be good for the sport, but it also has to be done right, because you want both of these guys or these competitors in their prime. You don't want to see a guy who's on the tail end of his career coming over to another organization, because then it's already kind of setting up for failure.
Yeah, of course, yeah. That will be, of course, always the best. But I think it's a great idea. Personally, I believe it's a great idea. And as long as you do with more fights, like Legacy and RFA is doing, you know, like 5 fights, not just 1 fight, and maybe 1 time a year, but at least 5 fights. You know, winning 5 out of 5 is going to be a hard thing to sweep an entire organization. So most of the time it's going to be a 3-2, hopefully not a 4-1. A 4-1 is kind of like a sweep also, you know. So if one of the organization would have won the other 4, then, well, the one with the 1, of course, they're going to be looked at a little less. That's simply how it goes, the way. And it's sad, but that's the way it is.
Okay, and before I move on to the other panelists, is there any 2 organizations that you would be most excited to see a crossover promotion?
I don't know. I think Bellator World Series of Fighting, that would be kind of fun, you know, to see those guys go at it. And for the rest, I don't think, nobody is really in the league of the UFC yet. You know, if there's the Pride was there before, you know, but if another organization gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then of course I would like to see the UFC with another organization as well.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Mark, you and I have talked about these crossover things, and with RFA and Legacy and CES and Cage Rage and Jungle Fights, all of these being feeder leagues, more or less, for the bigger organizations. What do you think about this? What do you think about this happening at this time in MMA?
I still think it's a good thing, Aaron, and I think it can be really great, actually, for some of these feeder organizations because it helps for stars to emerge or potential stars to emerge out of these. If we can see, the two best of each going through, and you build up a little bit of hype, a little bit of news around them, it can make things really interesting. I mean, to Bas's point, I think, sort of when there's the Pride UFC dynamic going on for a little while there's a lot of excitement when it was Vanderlei versus Chuck potentially, cross-promotion fight, and I think that, we all know how that kind of went. It was more of just a stunt on Pride's end, or that was sort of the claim. I don't know how it actually, with the backdoor news was, but I think it's great. Like, again, I like the idea of having a bit of a bracket, so it's not just sort of a one-shot, and one organization potentially loses a lot of face as a result. Kind of make it exciting, if you get a 2-2 and, one organization wins 2 fights or another organization wins 2, it could be really, really exciting if you have sort of like, that one sort of tiebreaker rubber match fight between them. I like it.
Yeah, I think that it's actually a long time coming, and I'm glad to see RFA and Legacy doing it. Now, Leslie, with your experience in both Invicta and UFC, from a female fighter's perspective, what do you think about being able to mix it up with the other organizations and actually seeing where you fall in the rankings?
I think it's very cool to be able to mix it up like how you guys are talking about, because there's a lot of unanswered questions all the time about who is better, and it's hard to ever take any of those questions seriously when people are in different promotions. I also think it's cool that a fighter has a chance to represent their promotion, not just themselves and not just their team, but the actual promotion, because I think that that's going to bring about more investment in the fighter from the promotion. And that's always nice.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? I said that yesterday also in Inside MMA we were talking about it. It's kind of like the IFL had, was team versus team. And I think if you have promotion against promotion, exactly what Leslie said, then all the guys that are fighting, let's say, they're even when they're in the same weight class, they will be rooting for their own fighters, of course. And maybe even when they train together, and that's what I think the IFL made the IFL so strong, you share the secrets. Like, for instance, I always said, if I'm training with a guy and I constantly drop him with a left hook and a liver shot, for instance, and the guy doesn't seem to pick it up, I will never say where I'm dropping him with. But if we as a team going to compete against another team, I'm going to say, dude, I just dropped you 3 times with a left hook and a liver shot. Watch out, because this is the setup. Now I start sharing my things. And the same with guys who take me down. They say, Bas, this is the way you stop a takedown. Because now they want to see me win. You see what I mean? But if you train against each other, you not necessarily share that information. And I think that makes the fighters good as well.
You know what? That's a fantastic point.
Totally.
Yeah, it might actually bring up everybody's game, because instead of keeping these insider secrets, you'd be sharing them. That's fantastic, and it seems like we're all in favor of the crossover, so I cannot wait for Access TV to get that on and see how RFA and Legacy match up with each other. Now, on another topic, last night there was a UFC in Rio. Mark and I were talking about this. In what was probably the worst stoppage in UFC history, Drew Dober was robbed of the fight. Mark, I'm going to let you take over on this one, because there's a couple of parts of this. Not only was it bad reffing, but then there was also a suggestion for perhaps a new addition to the UFC. Go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Aaron, about the Drew Dober fight, it seemed that he was pulled out a little bit early. He was in a good position, pulled himself into half guard, wasn't really in any danger of being submitted by his guillotine choke. At the end of the day, the ref thought that he was done. I don't know if it was due to a lack of training or enough experience on the ref's part that he couldn't recognize that there was no danger, but he called the fight, potentially, robbed somebody of a victory. And I think the question came out afterwards from Dominic Cruz whether or not instant replay should be introduced into the UFC or mixed martial arts in general. Over the last number of years, we've kind of seen it emerge as a more critical part of a lot of other sports. And I think in some sports, personally, it can work really well. I'm Canadian, as some people know, and as Canadian, I'm an NHL fan, and I think in hockey it works really well for replaying goals and things like that. However, I think it's a little bit more of a stickier situation in the UFC and in MMA in general, because it really sort of brings out this point as to when do you do that replay? When does it come in? Does it come in after the stoppage? Does it come in after somebody's had an eye poke? When do you do it? How do you do this? Bas, I'd like your point of view on this.
Well, I've been saying this every year on Inside MMA. We are allowed to give our ask for what we would like to see changed in mixed martial arts. And for many years, I've been saying I would like to see a cruiserweight, like a 235-pound weight class, which I really like. You know, I'm also for taking elbows out and putting knees in on the ground, since elbows most of the time, especially on the ground, just cut you up, but they don't knock you out. And my third one, which I've been saying for 6 or 7 years straight, is instant replay. Because, for instance, if you get kicked in the groin or you get eye poked, you always see how fast they can pull that up. You know, I mean, it's seconds. Because what happens, they say, oh, boom, the referee stops the fight. Now, at that moment, if somebody hits a button, it automatically goes back like 5 or 10 seconds. They can preset that. And they can, right away, they can see the instant replay. So I'm all for that, and especially like the Uriah Faber fight. Remember that when he put his thumbs up, but the referee just didn't see it because he was on the other side. And then he stopped the fight. You know, so then I say, okay, well, from the other camera angle, we can see instant replay. He puts his thumb up, put him back in that position, and I know that it's a very hard one. This one, you know, from a half guard to guillotine is very hard to pull off. Still, it is. I saw a guy in the World Series of Fighting pulling it off, but it's a different kind of guillotine. But the one that yesterday was, because I pulled the picture up when you guys were talking about it earlier, he was not in danger at all. I mean, he had his shoulder dug into the chest of his opponent, so I really don't think that he was going to be choked out. If you have a full guard, you know, then it's going to be hard. How do you restart that fight? That's the only thing. Because a half an inch of difference with your hands in the guillotine choke can make the choke or cannot make the choke.
Okay, now, Bas, I see your point, and it could be a tool, but I do want to play devil's advocate here in the fact that it could also, this is my concern, is that it would slow down or it would interrupt the flow of the fight, and the man that had the momentum going in wouldn't have it after they restarted the fight. So in your opinion, if they did instate, say, the instant replay rule, would it hurt the referee's reputation or the respect of the referee at all? And B, would there have to be a time limit so it didn't disrupt the flow of the fight?
It will go fast. It will go in within 30 seconds again start. It will not hurt the referee. Because many times, well, in this particular case, you know, it almost looks like he doesn't understand that it's very hard to pull off a guillotine choke in the position he was in. But like with the Uriah Faber incident, the referee was just on the other side. He didn't see the thumbs up. I think that stopping a fight for no reason, for the wrong reason, and let a fighter lose outweighs everything else. So I always, even the flow of the fight, everything, I would say losing for a fighter, man, they trained 10 weeks really hard, you know, and then if a referee stops a fight because of a mistake, you know, that's a hard pill to swallow. And so that will outweigh it always. The flow, I don't really care about. They're fighters, they're professional fighters. They should be jumping right back into the flow.
Okay, that's a great point. Great point. So you're obviously a proponent for that. Now, Leslie, as an analyst and as a fighter, what do you think about being able to take a look instantly at what happens with you and maybe saving or correcting a mistake that was made during one of your performances?
Oh, yeah, I think it'd be brilliant. I think it'd be enhancing. I think it'd make the referees look way better because then you finally have a quantifiable way of evaluating a referee's performance. If they saw it and we all see it on the instant replay, then there's no refuting it. Everyone knows, yeah, that referee did good. And I think that most of the referees are really good. And I think they'd actually appreciate getting that second chance to not end someone's fight after Bas pointed out that they had trained so hard getting ready for it. I think it'd be a great.
Well, good. I'm glad we're all kind of in agreement on that, because if you saw the fight last night with Dober, and it brings Bas's point into the limelight even more, he trained for weeks and weeks, and that was an absolute robbery. Dana White came out and said that referee should never work again, and they said that they were going to take care of Drew Dober. So hopefully he gets to come back to Brazil, he gets to rematch for that fight, because I think he was doing pretty well, and because he was in half guard, he was actually in a dominant position, although he was in the guillotine position. I think Dominic Cruz anecdotally called it the Mexican headlock, which I'm not exactly sure if that's only in his gym or something like that. But he was in the dominant position, and he could have gone from there and actually turned that into a win. So, hopefully in the near future we get to see some instant replay action. Now,
by the way, I just looked the word up, quantifiable, and added to my Dutch vocabulary.
See?
I'm not kidding. Logic to determine, indicate, or express the quantity of.
See, now,
that's the word. I didn't know that.
Just that moment having Leslie on the show made that show that much better. So now now this is a quantifiable improvement in our show.
Yeah. Logic.
Okay, now Leslie, you wanted to finish up before our first break. You wanted to ask Bas about injuries. And this kind of segues into something that I'm interested in, then I'll pass it over to you. We've had Mark Munoz announce that he's going to retire. Josh Koscheck has dropped 2 fights by choke in the last 3 weeks, and Shayna Baszler looked like she got a horrible knee injury or a potential injury. And I want to know if this plays into your question about preserving yourself, how important it is to know when to say when.
Yeah, okay. Well, with me, it was the pain. I had everything I could work around it, but I got tendonitis in both arms, and I had it in my last 3 fights. And it would happen, if it would happen, let's say 3 weeks before the fight, that would mean that every day, 2 times a day, I would have an excruciating pain. I could only train 45 minutes, so I better train really hard. For some reason, at 45-minute mark, it hits. And then I will be in pain for an hour and a half, and that pain was just, you can't even explain. It was so painful. And that really took the fun out of training, out of everything. And then I said, okay, if I can't train with fun anymore, it's time to stop. I think the most important thing in fighting, and they always say, go out there, have fun. And I never got that all the way in the beginning, in my Thai boxing. And then once I started doing mixed martial arts, it was, I go, oh, okay, yeah, I got it. Now I'm having fun. Now I worked on 3 different setups to a certain submission, or maybe 4 or 5 combinations only. And then if you pull one of those 3 submissions or one of those 5 combinations off in a fight, the things that you worked on really hard in your training camp, yeah, that is a lot of fun. You're having a lot of fun doing it. And I love to be tired. I loved everything about fighting, but the little things like, mat burns on your toes, for instance, or you open your knuckles. If you open your knuckle, let's say also 3 weeks before a fight, that means it's not going to close anymore. You will reopen it every workout, and that hurts in the beginning. You got to fight through that, and it's not like it's a big pain, but these little things are nagging things, and you kind of take those because they're kind of cool on one side, but like intense pain or injuries that you can't roll like this anymore. You can't start on your feet anymore because my knee is hurting, and if I tweak it, now it's becoming a problem training, because that's not how you're going to fight. You're going to start on your feet. So once those things happen and you really have to adapt in your training style, I say, yeah, it's time to call it quits. Hopefully you had a backup plan, I always say. That's why I always say don't stop working. I had 3 jobs when I fought in Pancras for the first year. I said, what if I walk on the street and a car hits me? Can happen. What if I break my leg in that accident or something? I can't fight. If I don't have a job anymore, how am I going to make money? But nowadays, a lot of these guys, they live in a house together, and then right away they think, they don't need to work anymore. It's like an actor who says, oh no, I just work when I have to act. I don't have to wait tables or something. No, I think it's all part of a game. You have to keep on doing it. And make sure that you have something to fall back to, even when you don't get an injury in training, even if it's on the street or a misstep, whatever it is. Make sure you have a backup plan, because otherwise quitting is going to be very hard.
Okay, that's fantastic. Leslie, I'm sorry that I stepped on your toes with that question. Is there anything that you'd like to add from the fighter's perspective about protecting yourself and knowing when to say when as far as training and fighting?
Oh, I'm still trying to learn about that kind of thing. That's why I wanted to ask Bas this question, because it's relevant every single day. And there's a lot of different perspectives to look at it from, the fighter perspective of, I have to go out there and I have to prove to all my coaches and all my training partners that I'm tough and that I'm trying my hardest and I can do this. Yeah, and that sometimes does lead to injuries. And so it's just nice to hear that it's important to pay attention to that kind of thing.
No, absolutely. And I think we have one of the smartest guys as far as an industry insider. I've never seen anybody who has successfully traversed so many different things in the industry as Bas has, and we're going to get to that right after our first break. So we're going to take a quick break here. You've been listening to Stand and Bang Radio, and you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and pretty much anywhere else you can find MMA podcasts.
Hi, I'm Andrea KTB Lee, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Max Leonard Holloway.
This is Charmaine Not So Sweet Tweet.
Hi, this is Kelly McGill, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, this is Jansen Medeiros, and you're listening to Stand and Bang Radio.
Hey, fight fans, welcome back to Stand and Bang Radio. I'm here with Mark and Leslie. Mark?
Hey, how's everybody doing out there tonight?
And Leslie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
All right, fantastic. We are here with Bas Rutten. Bas, thanks for taking time with us.
You're very welcome.
Okay, now, Bas, I think that there's some sort of misconception. I know you've told the story a couple of times, but it's not that easy to find unless you're looking. I think people are just under the impression that you have always been this big, tough guy, the pancrase, the UFC, all of the open hand palm strikes and the liver destruction and the always kicking twice and stuff like that. But actually, the story is a little bit different. When you were a child, you actually suffered from a very serious skin condition along with asthma. Can you go ahead and kind of paint the picture for the fans?
Yeah, when I was born, I was covered in eczema from head to toe, and that went away. And then 6 years later, when we moved to a different village, we suddenly it started coming back, and that goes together with asthma. A lot of asthma patients have this, and a lot of eczema patients have that. They have asthma and they have eczema at the same time. Well, actually, not at the same time, but it balances back and forth. So when I would have asthma, then my eczema would be way less. And if I would have eczema, my asthma would be way less. Most of the time with me, it was asthma attacks. I would get asthma attacks from, let's stay with a dog. If I would spend 20 minutes with a dog, I needed to be a week in bed the next day. Couldn't get out of the bed, couldn't eat. People go, it annoys me when somebody's coughing a few times and he goes, oh, my asthma is acting up. I go, dude, that is not asthma, Try to go one day through that stuff, like for instance, my room was one floor up from where the restroom was. It would literally take me 45 minutes to go to the restroom. Just to take the stairs down, take 2 steps, sit down, keep breathing because you're so tired from the 2 steps and then 2 steps more and then sitting down again. So that was a hard life. But the harder thing is, of course, when the kids are bullying because of the skin disease, they automatically think you can't blame these kids. They think it's contagious. It looks horrible. I mean, if I would scratch it, like pus would come out. My mother had to, my poor mother, I think every, let's say out of a year, at least like, 300 days, she had to mummify me. Every night putting creams over my arms and everywhere I had it. And then the whole, family, they would send in old bed sheets. And they would rip them in little pieces and in stripes so you could use it as a bandage. And then I would be mummified, I always called it. And then in the middle of the night, it would always start itching. So I would rip everything up and then everything would be open again. So my mom had to come again, put the creams on, do it again. I ended up with a tile, this big tile of stone next to my bed. And that I would use for itching because I rather had pain than the itching. So I would just start hitting the tile really hard. So I would have more pain in my hands than the itching, the itching feeling because itching drives you nuts. And that was pretty much it. So I got bullied a lot. I was always a loner. I spent a lot of time in the forest. I was a master in climbing trees, climbing everything. Every building in my city, in the town where I lived, I climbed. Every top building, if there was construction going on, those really high cranes, that look, how do I say it? They go all the way up and then it sticks all the way to the front. Those, I don't have a name for it, but it's a really high construction. You would find me in the very, very top, all the way at the end of that thing always, because I like to climb things. I could go in the forest and I maybe needed to land, climb out of a tree maybe 3 or 4 times. That was it. But for the rest, I could literally go from treetop to treetop throughout the whole forest. And that came also always in handy when I had problems with the bullies because they couldn't do it. I would just climb a tree, and then I let them climb the tree, and when they got very close, I started swinging left to right, and then I would go to the next tree, and since they couldn't do it, that would always save me. And but the thing is, I also did track and field. I was always a good athlete. Even when I was very sick, if the asthma was gone, I was a pretty decent track and field guy. Believe it or not, Bruce Jenner, he was my idol. He was the Olympic gold medalist in decathlon, and that was what I wanted to do. I had a really good high jump, really good long jump. My javelin, shot put, discus, sprint was pretty good. I was really working still on the pole vault. But I was always a good athlete, and also on the streets. The kids bullied me, but I never lost a street fight. I was really, maybe it was the anger there already. I just would grab them in a headlock and just shake them until they would stop moving or would scream, "Please stop!" But words were always the worst for me. Calling you a leper, hey, don't lose your hand, don't lose your feet, don't, all that stuff. It starts bulking up. And Bruce Lee, Enter the Dragon, man, I went to a movie and that changed my life. I saw Bruce Lee for the first time, together with my brother. We sneaked into a theater there. When I came out, I go, that's my answer, if I'm like that guy, nobody's going to mess with me anymore. So, finally asked my parents, took a long time for them to allow me to take on a martial art, which was at the time, it was karate and taekwondo. Those were the hottest sports, and I started training in taekwondo with a really cool neighbor boy that I have. Well, actually, it was a neighbor girl. She was a very pretty girl, and she had the coolest guy in town, and he was doing taekwondo, and he took me under his wing, and he brought me to the adult classes, and I was training with the adults. And that's where I realized I have a talent for this, because within months I was beating up the brown belts there, and they started talking about it because I would drop people with body shots, with kicks to the body. I heard them laugh in the dressing room, talking to each other. Man, did that kid drop Robert? Yeah, man, Robert went down. That kid dropped Robert, So I started getting very confident, and that led into my best street fight I ever had. It was a one-punch knockout against the biggest bully in town, and that was it. 95% of the bullying stopped right there because I dropped him, broke his nose. He went to the hospital, and the police showed up on our doorstep. So my parents took me off of fighting. That's all. This is all in a nutshell. And then they said, see, they always believed that fighting was a violent thing. And of course, that was a confirmation. They never knew that I was bullied. I never really told them. I didn't want them to know. I was ashamed for it, I think. So then later when I became 19, when I moved out of the house, that's when I started picking up martial arts right away. And one thing led from another: taekwondo, karate, Thai boxing, competing Thai boxing, and then start doing comedy, martial arts shows. And on one of these shows, somebody saw me doing all these crazy acrobatics. If you would run to a ring to perform a show, I would go there and make like a cartwheel with a double flip-flap backwards and then a somersault, stuff like that. Or I would kick him in the gut. He would grab my leg and throw me backwards. I would make a somersault, and while I make the somersault, I would kick him in the head. So I know one of these guys, his name was Chris Dolman. He was from the organization Rings. He stopped me and he said, "Man, I remember you from your Thai boxing days, and you're crazy athletic. Did you ever think about free fighting?" That was the name they had at the time. And one thing led to another. I went to a training session, and then suddenly Pancras was looking for fighters, and I went over there, and I knocked a guy out who tried to knock me out, and I was fighting in Japan 6 weeks later. It was the craziest thing.
That is unbelievable. That story always blows me away when I hear that. That's kind of like such a triumph. Now, here's something that I wasn't aware of. During all of this, you would have to reinflate your lungs with an asthma inhaler. And that's actually where you started to realize that it was the difficulty with inspiration that actually gave you that cardio advantage, and that led to something that you invented. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about how you figured out that the inspiratory system is so important and what that led to with the O2 trainer?
Well, breathing out, if you breathe out, it's an ab workout. Now, don't get me wrong, your intercostal muscles and your diaphragm, they help you breathe in as well, but I always realized when I had asthma, it was very hard to breathe in. Breathing out is always easy. And after an asthma attack, a week in bed, 8 days in bed, and breathing 24/7 very hard, I would resume my track and field. And when I would resume my track and field, I would break my running times. And it always, it blew me away, and I was trying to figure out what it was. Is it the cortisone, steroids they give me, the pills, whatever? Maybe that's the reason I'm better with it. Why is that every time after an asthma attack, I get better with running? And then I went to the doctor's office because I spent a lot of time in the doctor's. Man, you have no clue how many times I was in the hospital. The things that they did with me for 3 months, every day getting 10 shots in each arm, and like all these crazy tests. It was a nightmare. And at that time, a simple inhaler like they have now, it wasn't really. It was like a capsule, and you have to break it, and that capsule is on like a little wheel, and if you breathe in, the wheel starts turning, and then the powder goes into your lungs. It was a whole different system at the time. But anyway, I went to the doctor, and I saw at the doctor's office there was a drawing of a pair of lungs, infected lungs. And as a kid, well, a lot of adults think also is that the infection is in the lung, in the sac, so to say, but it's not. The infection is in the lung pipe, that the airway that goes to the lungs. And I saw that infected area on the poster, and that was the light bulb that went off. I go, oh, of course. I've been breathing through an infected area, tried to pull air in for 7 or 8 days straight. Now when the infection is gone, I actually made my whole inspiratory system, my breathing stronger, because I had to pull it through that little tiny area, and now it's gone, so it's much more easy for me to breathe. Why don't I come up with something that controls the air intake? And that was the idea, and then I started experimenting with coins. We always used to go to, but it was the craziest thing. We went to, like France and Italy, and they had coins at the time with holes in them, and I would put the coin in front of my teeth, in between my lips, and I tried to breathe in through the hole, and out through my nose, but once you get tired, you spit that thing out, and it gets very dangerous, because if you get it in your lung, of course, you're going to die. So, man, I got to come up with something. And all my friends, I told this invention to. It was called the Ruttenizer. That was the original name. And then when I came to America, I was talking to people also. Every party where you are, I said, man, this guy says, oh, I have this idea for an invention. And then when I would say my idea for an invention, everybody would say, dude, you got to make that thing. You got to make that thing. I think it's a good thing. And then when Vanderlei Silva was training the fighters on The Ultimate Fighter, he was apparently training with a snorkel device. And that was when my telephone went crazy. And all my buddies that I told it to, they said, dude, you got to start making this thing, because they're going to come up with it. Somebody else is going to do it. So I started doing a patent search, and realizing that the way I do it, only controlling the air in, wasn't done before. Everybody focuses on the air in and air out, which actually now is proven by a lot of medical tests in the United Kingdom, because they have a machine there, a little device also, an inspiratory trainer, which is more complicated than mine, but it works the same. And that's actually covered by the insurance for asthma patients. And their tests say, if you control the air in and out, it pretty much has no effect. So the only way to train it is with the inspiratory, if you control the air in while breathing in. And I know, I haven't used an inhaler now for almost 2 years. I don't even carry one with me anymore. You have to understand, I'm an asthma patient. So I carry that thing with me everywhere I went. If I sneeze 3 times really loud, I have to spray my lungs open. If I would fight for a world title in the dressing room, if I do 30 or let's say a minute and a half on the focus mitts or on the Thai pads, my lungs would close. I spray them open, and then I can go. Then everything is open. But I always needed to carry that thing with me, and I don't even have it anymore. Now I can actually jump in the ocean, which is something that I do lately a lot. I go to the ocean, have these resistance tools that I use to do power training under the water there, and I can go full blast right away, and my lungs don't close anymore. Now, I gave it to my friend who had asthma. He called me within 10 days. He said, dude, I want to sell this in Europe, because he lives in Holland. I said, why? He says, my asthma's gone. I have another friend, boom, asthma gone, like in a week. So I start bringing this out, and of course I can medically not claim it yet, but I will, because the tests are just too phenomenal. It really works. It makes sure, the test that I have right now with 19 people who did it, each and every one of them increased dramatically, like the amount of air that they can move in and out their lungs. So it really works. I just have to find out. I'm waiting for a few more medical tests. If I want them now, I can get them, but then they're not going to be put in journals. And I want them in a medical journal, because then it carries much more weight than when it's not in a medical journal. So that's what I'm waiting for right now. And I think once the people start realizing that it's really that good and it's that cheap, it's $50, then I think it's going to do wonders.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. The journey that you've took, and then being able to help so many people potentially, and of course the fact that there is a lot of implication for fighters. You need to have great cardio, so you could implement this into training camps as well as asthmatics. So much applause there. That's an absolutely fantastic story. And Mark, what do you have to say? What do you have to say about all that, and what do you got for Bas?
I mean, as far as that's amazing. It's an amazing system overall. It sounds like, again, almost revolutionary in terms of what it can provide for people, not only to, as you said, for asthmatics, but also, again, as just a regular part of people's training routine and regimen for building up cardio and whatnot. I mean, it's, I think that's really, hats off to you, Bas, for coming through with that.
It's a thing that people don't realize. I always say it in interviews and in a commercial. It's like the survival rule of 3. The survival rule of 3 is that the average body can go 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without oxygen. So it's the most important thing that the body needs, yet not a lot of people focus on it. And you know what was also fun? When I was starting to train with with the prototype, and we would go to a restaurant, my wife and I, my wife would always say, "Man, keep your voice down. You're speaking way too loud, And I go like, "I'm not. It doesn't feel to me." But I realized later it's because of the O2 training. I was making my whole system stronger, so my voice got much louder. So I said, "Oh, wait a minute. It's for singers. It's for scuba divers. It's for people who play horn instruments. And of course it's for any athlete."
That's amazing. Mark, on a different subject, I know that you are very curious, and just for the fight fans involved with the show tonight, because we have Bas on, we're just going to go ahead and go off the rails. We've got such an interesting guy on. We're going to quit with the musical interlude 30 seconds, and we're just going to go ahead and ask Bas questions for the rest of the time, if that's okay with you, Bas?
Yeah, of course.
All right, Mark, I'm going to hand it over to you, because I know that you have a lot of interesting things to ask Mr. Rutten.
So, Bas, you've given us a really actually nice story of your life, walking us through all of that. Now, I want to kind of talk about some of the more recent events, maybe, or even some that happened over the last couple of years. It seems like, you talked about some of your bullying experiences, whatnot, and how you had to defend yourself. It seems like even recently, in sort of your later years, you've found yourself into some, let's call them interesting situations. I think there's a certain club in Sweden called Spy. I recall hearing something about Brian Urlacher one time at a charity event. Do you sort of have this aura about you where trouble just kind of follows you wherever you go? Or
No, that's a funny question, because I was on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, and he said, "Well," I said, "but those are the two stories. It's with me. It's very hard to pick a fight with me. I always try to fix it. I say, listen, even when it's not my fault, I still say, listen, this is my perspective. And I try to explain to them that it's absolutely not, because they try to pick a fight with me. They're drunk, and they come over and they think, oh, this is Bas Rutten, if I knock this guy out. And I go, guys, well, don't. I don't want to fight, And most of the time I just stick my hand up to a bouncer, because all the bouncers, thank God, they watch fighting. And I say, just take the guy out. And then when he gets very violent, say, oh, you're afraid. I would give him that's what I would do in LA. I would give him my business card, from the gym. And I said, well, I put my number on the back. If you still want to go tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, give me a call and we'll do it in the gym. Any rules you want. I said, but I guarantee you, and this is what I'm going to put in his head, of course. I said, I'll give you 100% guarantee that tomorrow morning when you wake up, you're not going to call. And the reason is because all this, what we're doing now, it makes no sense. You're just drunk. You make no sense. But listen, if you still want to do it, let's do it. And of course, nobody ever picked it up. But there are some guys, that you, at the moment, for instance, the Bas fight in Sweden, I'm apologizing. Nothing went wrong. I was just dancing, but everybody told me already about those bouncers. They were called as the Mafia bouncers. That was their nickname. And they put me to the side and they brought me to this weird place, and then they started, you gotta leave. And I say, okay, no problem. I don't want any trouble. And that took them by surprise. I could tell on their faces. And then the guy right away, you have to understand, you gotta go right now. I say, yeah, of course, I'll go right now. I said, can you tell my buddy, he's from Holland, he's also a bald guy. he's in this room. Can you tell him I'm outside? Otherwise, he doesn't know where I am. And, we're in Sweden. It's not like our hometown. And then the guy, they're still looking at each other from, the guy doesn't get angry. Then he starts poking my chest. And I go, dude, listen, I'm going to go. There's no reason here to touch me. Just please don't touch me. I'm leaving right now. I don't want any trouble. Forget about my friend. I will wait for him outside. And right away, the other guy jumps over and he pokes a finger in my eye. Still, I'm holding my eye and I go, guys, I don't want any trouble. And then they poke me the other eye. And, okay, so now what is next going to be? They're going to kick me in the balls. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Now I tried enough. Yeah, and that's the moment I knock him out. And then all hell breaks loose, and then I'll make sure that, okay, now I'm going to go to town, now I tried really to stop this situation from happening, but, now I got to make sure that, because if you fight 5 guys, you better make sure they stay down, because they wake up like the other guys the whole time, So, and that becomes a big story, because it came in the newspaper, but that's pretty much the last real fight that I had, and that's a long time ago, I think that was just when I came in, like 15 years ago almost. So, but it stays in the people's minds. And in Holland too, when I had a fight in Holland, I was put as a bouncer because I was literally wearing my glasses as a bouncer, and I did that on purpose for the intimidation because people would think like, oh, if he's good, he's got to be good. Otherwise he's not going to wear glasses, And then still, if they would pull the fight, I would always, they'd pick me because I would always, diffuse the situation. 9 out of 10 times we're not going to fight. Because I simply take him to the side, away from the people. I don't make fun of them, and I simply explain what is going down at that moment and why he is unreasonable, and this makes no sense, like, oh, you can't come in if you wear sneakers. Then he wants to fight me. I go, dude, if I fight, I cannot let you in because my owner, my boss, tells me I can't let anybody in with sneakers. Don't kill the messenger here, dude. If I let you in and he sees you walking in with sneakers, guess who's going to lose his job? I'm going to lose my job. And I don't have another job. So please, can you understand? Why don't you go home, have a friend here, pick up some other shoes, and then come in. I let you go in with any shoe but sneakers or slippers, sandals, flip-flops, whatever you call them here. And then most of the time, these guys, oh, okay, sorry, dude, yeah, I got it. It's not your fault. I say, I'm just a messenger. I'm just passing on a message. But then when these guys, when I explain like this, some of them think you're afraid. And then when I suddenly go into mode, I go, whoa. You think, I hope you're not thinking I'm afraid, right? I'm actually trying to save you right now. Because for me, it's going to be very easy to beat the crap out of you. And I don't want to beat the crap out of you. Now, once you start talking like that, the tough guy, he's going to call your bluff, And you have that a few times only. But then when they call your bluff, I want to make sure that everybody in the bar where I work knows what I'm going to do if you really keep pushing the fight. So yeah, then I beat him up, because at that moment he deserves it. I tried everything in my power to defuse that situation for 5 or 6 times, and they keep on going. Now I got to go ballistic and make sure that all the other people know, don't mess with these guys over there.
No, that's fantastic. Now, it's good to know that trouble doesn't follow you around. And I just got one more quick question just for my own edification before I pass it over to Leslie, because I know she's got a couple questions for you. But I heard the story about the charity event with Urlacher. All I want to know is, what did his face look like when his buddies told him who you were and that he was potentially making the worst mistake of his life?
First of all, I hated myself for putting that story out there on the Best Damn Sports Show period, because they asked me the whole Urlacher story, and I thought everybody knew. It wasn't Urlacher who started. It was his brother, So his brother was drunk and he was behaving crazy. It was one of those guys again. I walk backwards. I step by accident on his toes. He's pushing me in the back. I go, oh, I'm very sorry. I didn't see you there. And when you step on somebody's toes, you don't really put your weight on it because so you pull off right away. And right away he starts profanity, and I go, I'm very sorry. And again, profanity. I say, oh, he's drinking a butt. So I go to the bartender. Hey, can you get him a butt, please? I'm sorry, dude. And he kept going, F you. And then, suddenly then I shoot in my mode. I'm going to go, this is a charity event. Normally I would have knocked you out 2 times ago. I'm just not the one to do it because we're here trying to raise money for kids with open heart surgery. Let's be civilized here. And again, profanity. And at that moment, Urlacher, his brother, comes there. He doesn't know anything that goes on, but he's, of course, defending his brother, which is a natural thing to do. and so he asked me if I want to go outside, so, and then, my buddies and I, we started laughing, kind of smirking like, yeah, sure, if you want to go. And then the bouncers jumped and they said, don't do it. But it's, so when I told that story, it's everybody gave so much crap against him. Like, he just came up for his brother. His brother was the guy who instigated the whole thing. He was actually a really nice guy.
That brings up another point, and then I'll shoot it over to Leslie. It is crazy to me, probably because I'm a hardcore fan, and I know Mark is a hardcore fan, that there are people out there that don't recognize Bas Rutten. Like, I would recognize him across the stadium. I'd be like, oh my God, there's Bas right there. But it will show you that the MMA community is still small and still growing. And on that note, Leslie, I know that you have some things that you want to ask Bas. So go ahead. I'll pass it off to you.
Cool. Okay, here's what I was wondering is I wanted to ask you, Bas, about the transition from a fighter to basically celebrity. So in this conversation, I've already noticed that you obviously have a great work ethic. You're an entrepreneur, and you have a really strong sense of justice without being defensive because you don't seem to take things personally. So I can see how those three things would definitely help. But what advice would you give to a fighter trying to establish themselves as an MMA personality? What would you say to do?
I always said that's the backup plan I always talk about. With me, it came automatically. But and with me, I've been so fortunate because when I stopped fighting, I was one of the first guys who started fighting. I started fighting before the UFC started in Japan. That's how old I am. I just turned 50 years old. So as soon as when the Pride Fighting Championships wanted to do a pay-per-view show to America, I was in the dressing room and I was calling shots. There was this TV playing with the fights that go on at that moment. You can't watch what goes down. I say, oh, he's going to get armbarred. Look, watch his right arm. And they go like, no, he's not. Look, he's not. I say, give it 10 seconds. And 10 seconds later, boom, guy gets armbarred. And then the Carlos Newton fight, I saw that with Sakuraba. And I saw him on all fours, sitting on all fours. And he was already looking, because Newton put his leg in between his legs. I said, guy, he's going to knee bar this guy. And again, 10 seconds later, he rolls in and he gets him in a knee bar and he finishes the fight. So they go like, did you ever do commentating? No. Now they needed broadcasters at that time because there was no other organization. I just retired fighting. So I was just on the perfect spot, the perfect time, perfect place. And boom, suddenly I was a commentator. And then I started doing the International Fight League, and what I did in Holland, I did these crazy martial arts comedy shows. Entertain the people, do crazy martial arts stuff, things that go wrong on purpose, like really funny things we would do. And that would catch on. And I always liked to entertain people. I always wanted to try stand-up comedy and, just entertaining people. So I just did that always in front of the camera. When I went to NBC for the World Series of Fighting, I remember when I started singing a Justin Bieber song, and I hear in my ear, the guy from NBC saying to the other guys, is he singing Justin Bieber right now? And then the other guys are answering. They say, just let it go. That's Bas. He just does it. And then later on, I realized at that moment that I'm doing it. But it's not like I'm singing the song because I want a song. No, there's some dead silence somewhere. Suddenly I hear a Justin Bieber song in the background. My daughter used to love Justin Bieber, so I know all the lyrics because they've been playing it 24/7 in the house. So I start singing the song. It's not like I plan these things. All the things I do, there's not one plan. It's not like everything just comes. And apparently, my crazy Dutch humor seems to pick on here. People seem to like it, and that what pretty much landed me every job. What actually landed me the most was my street fighting DVD. That guy who put on on YouTube, he put that clip with all the ding ding dong dong ding 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 ding, all that stuff in a 4-minute. He cropped it in a 4-minute clip. Dude, I had Cartoon Network, Grand Theft Auto, video games. I had so much work. I actually tried to contact the guy for years, and I said, pick anything on my website. Obviously, you need to be a fan, I guess. Whatever you want, take it from my website. I'll send it to you for free, because you gave me a lot of work, but nobody ever reacted. It's all about, so for me, it was a lot of luck, Leslie. That's what I'm trying to say. I was just at the right time, at the right spot, because they needed people at the time who weren't there yet. Now, it's a little harder, I think. Now it's, if you want to be a commentator, what organization are you going to do it with? Because UFC, okay, they have already 5, let's say. Do they really need a 6th or a 7th? maybe hopefully one of them is going to say, you know what, I have my time and I'm going to go, but then it's only one spot to fill. So it's much harder, those kind of jobs to get now, I think, than it was at my time, because with me, there were simply no people for it. And I was just there at the right spot in the right time. I would say as a fighter also, if you want to keep going into commentating and doing things, I would say take acting classes. That saved myself also. When I came to America, within 3 weeks, I was taking acting classes at the Beverly Hills Playhouse. And I think that helps a lot, how to interact with the people in the audience also, and to start acting in front of a camera. Because as we know, you remember, I guarantee you, that you remember the first time you got interviewed and how nervous you were. And that you probably thought, I'd rather fight than I do these stupid interviews in front of, because they're nerve-wracking. So now you're saying that fighting is actually less nerve-wracking than doing an interview, and that's like anything in life. I actually become good at it.
Got it. Great.
Okay, now, Bas, you brought up your strange Dutch sense of humor. I saw something not that long ago, and I'm not sure if everybody is aware of this, but you played a joke on Morello. How did that come to be? I think it was you and Crow Cop almost scared him to death.
Yeah, Morrow always, Crow Cop at the time, nobody could interview him, only me. He said, Bas can interview me, and the rest I don't want anybody to interview him. And Morrow always said, I'm so happy he said that, because I'm so scared of the guy. So we knew Morrow was scared of him. So he was facing Ron Waterman. So I told the guys from Pride, I say, why don't we pull a trick on Morrow? I know that Mirko is a jokester too. He's a really funny guy. I will talk to him later, and he's going to do it, but so what happens is this was the setup. We will wait in the interview room, and then Morrow would interview one person, one fighter, and I would interview the opponent. So when Ron Waterman came in, I jumped right away up. I said, hey, Ron, sit down, boom, boom, boom. And I kind of took Morrow by surprise. He didn't realize anything yet. So I'm interviewing Ron Waterman, and he's fighting Mirko, right? So he leaves the room, and suddenly I look at Morrow, and I go, oh, man, I'm so sorry. And he goes, what? I said, oh, dude. And he goes, what? He starts getting nervous. And I go, I interviewed Ron. And he goes, what do you mean? I say, you got to do Mirko now. And Mirko never came to those interviews. Mirko, we always had to interview on the day of the event in the arena. So he goes, no, you do it. I say, no, man, because that's the way we do it. I do one guy, you do the other guy. Right? So that was the setup. So then I went the next day, I saw Mirko, and I told Mirko about this, and he started laughing right away. I said, just stop messing with him. Just tell him that you were not happy with his commentating and blah, 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 blah. And it was the funniest because Mirko started telling him that he was not happy with what Morrow said, and Morrow said, I wasn't me. And, that was a different commentator. And I'm saying, he says, Bas, tell him. But I'm just standing there, not saying anything. So he felt himself getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And Mirko kept going. And then the corner for Mirko also said, no, it was you. It was you, He started to get so scared. Dude, it was the funniest thing ever. And then every time we sent him back, and he didn't want to do it anymore. And at a certain moment, Mirko walked up to him, and you see him getting scared. And then Mirko puts his hands up, and he gives him a high five. He said, dude, we're just messing with you. We had him. It was that was a great day to mess with Morrow.
That was classic. If fight fans, if you haven't seen that video, it's on YouTube. And if you want to see a gentleman who is usually composed and professional be truly scared out of his wits, there is no doubt that man had to change his shorts after Mirko Krokop got done with him. That was an absolutely fantastic moment in MMA history. And with that, Mark, I know you've got some other stuff, so I'm going to pass it off to you.
Yeah, so first I want to throw a question out to our listeners. This is sort of rhetorical. What's worse, getting a liver shot from Bas Rutten or a practical joke played on you by Bas Rutten? Feel free to answer, because honestly, I don't think I'd want to be on the receiving end of either. I want to actually shift gears a little bit, though, Bas, and ask you a little bit about an upcoming event and sort of your take on it, the one between Shamrock and Kimbo, because I know you've got a lot of history with both of these fine fellas. You obviously were a key player in Kimbo's rise up into the MMA world. A big proponent of his, big trainer with him. I really helped him through. And obviously with Ken and his brother Frank, there was a lot of sort of back and forth fights with them. I know that Frank, eventually you got your I don't want to say revenge, but eventually, you kind of, you took care of business with him and never necessarily got the same opportunity with Ken. What's sort of your feelings about this fight in particular? I know you and Ken are kind of friends now and whatnot, but, where do your feelings lie? How do you feel the outcome of this fight's going to land?
Oh, it's a hard question. It's, like I said, I really like Ken. I like Kimbo. So for me, it doesn't really matter. As a fighter, actually, always, even when I see a friend fight, deep down inside, you say, I hope he wins. But on the other side, I know what the other guy does for it as well. He trains so hard for it. It doesn't really matter for a fighter, the win or lose. Yeah, of course, it matters for the fighter, but it's just, if the other guy is just his better day, well, then it's his better day, and you're going to lose. So I always wanted to fight Ken again, and when he came to Pride, I said, okay, I'll come out of retirement for him. If you guys can set that up, but he didn't want to go. So I go, okay, that is not going to happen. So on one side, I go because I trained with Kimbo, and I know, of course, what I can do. So then I say, well, if Kimbo would beat him, then that would kind of give me peace of mind. But then on the other side, it's Ken. And I love Ken as well. So here, I just let it out in the open and made the best man win, because both these guys are great guys.
That's a very diplomatic answer. I like that one, boss. Now, being that you developed your career over in Pancrase, a lot of the new age fans or the modern fans of MMA don't realize that there was modified rules there, and you had to use palm strikes. And that's why when we see your highlight videos, not only do you have the vicious liver kicks, but you're striking with your palm, because they didn't allow you to use a closed fist. Now that segues into something that I saw with you. You were on another television program, and they made up a biometric dummy for you to try to break its spleen. And of course you did with a closed fist. It looked very violent. You broke ribs, you broke the spleen, and then the commentator asked you, well, you did very well on the biometric dummy. Have you ever damaged somebody internally in a real fight? And you said, yes, I broke somebody's liver. I couldn't find that information. Could you expound on that a little bit? You broke somebody's liver?
Yeah, I snapped it. That was the fight against Jason DeLucia, because Pancrase was open hand strikes to the head and close fist to the body, so then automatically the body became a nice target for me as well. And as a bouncer, I used to hit with palm strikes, because I didn't want to break my hand, just like all the other buddies did, because they would hit a skull. You never know how an untrained person reacts, When you spar with a new guy, most of the time you're going to get injured because they move different. And it's the same on the street, If he's not a fighter, it's a very easy guy to beat. But, suddenly they bring the head forward. And if you don't expect that, and instead of the jaw, you hit the top of the head, you're going to break your hand. So I always used to fight with palm strikes. Now, with that fight against Jason, I just hit him, and I got to give it to him, man, because I dropped him with the first liver shot. He went down, and he got up. And I go, well, because in Pancrase there was 8 counts. And then I dropped him again with a body shot. I think I kicked him first. To the body, and then the last one, I hit him with everything I had, and I didn't feel any resistance, and that means that he was breathing in at the moment, so my knuckles just slid through the whole belly, so to say, and that was the one that kept him down. And then later at night, he started telling me, he goes, dude, I'm peeing blood. There's blood coming out of it. And so they took him to the hospital, and yeah, he damaged his liver. He ruptured his liver, so to say, and he was peeing blood. But the liver is a phenomenal little organ in the body. It recoups really fast, I think, from every organ in the body. I think the liver can take the most abuse, and it will come back. When the liver is gone for like 70%, and I know that's not with a blow, of course, but like a drunk or something, an alcoholic, once it's gone like 70%, yeah, that is going to be very hard to come back, or 80%. But you still 60% have your liver gone, you can still come back from that. The liver will repair itself. It's an amazing little organ there.
Okay, so that is why you're such a proponent of liver strikes. Is not only is it devastating, but it's shown recently Joe Duffy and Donald Cerrone getting dropped with liver kicks. There's some guys who can sustain blows to their face, but if you get a good liver shot, it shuts down your body and there's no stopping it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the thing. Most of the time you deliver this. So we had a little incident happen with Jason, and that made me decide to drop him with a body shot. I don't want to go into it anymore. He had enough. He had enough. But he was always a nice guy. But it was just something that happened, and I found that out, and I thought it was a really weird thing to do to me. And I said, okay, I'm going to go for the body in this one.
Okay.
Because it hurt so bad.
Yeah, it looks like it's just absolutely devastating. Leslie, I have one follow-up question to end the show, but we haven't heard from you for a while. Do you have anything else for Bas before I ask him my last question?
I wanted to ask, you've obviously been around so many more athletes and so many more shows than pretty much anybody. But I wanted to ask, what did it feel like the first time that you were part of an Invicta event? Was it the same energy? Could you tell a difference, like female energy or nationalism or anything like that, or was it just the same?
I loved it. I always said women are more violent than guys, and every guy who's in a relationship knows that. No, it's, I loved it. I loved the way you girls hang out, the way you talk, the way you counterattack my questions if I ask questions. It was so funny when I came there. A bunch of these girls, they're lesbians, so they're gay. And so when I wrote the questionnaire, are you married? What does your boyfriend think of it? I got some questionnaires back with big order, no, lesbians rule, like with the big markers on it. And I go, oh my God, this is so hilarious. Absolutely not ashamed of it, And then, and Pennington, Raquel Pennington, I believe it was a Shayna Baszler. She was at the weigh-in, she was crawling on the ground and she had this app on her phone with a machine gun app. And she was crawling like a military guy over the ground and she was she's trying to hit everybody. And I go, you'll never see this with the guys. And then that was you fought there too at that time. And you're violent too, Leslie. It was such a great performance. It's really good. Like I said, that's what I really like. And I commented that also, I believe, when you're fighting. I said, it's so tough. A lot of guys don't understand it. And that's why finally, thank God Dana saw it. Because watch, if there's a women's fight on the card, everybody loves it. All the MMA fans, everybody's a big fan of women fighting, except apparently for Fedor.
Well, it's lovely to get your endorsement after Fedor was so clear about how he felt about women in MMA.
Yeah, it's a shame, because everybody can do everything that a guy can do, a girl can do. And the other way around, not so much, I always think. There's simple things that girls can do better than guys, and thankfully, we don't even try that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Leave that one open for interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to comment on that one, Bas. Now, like I said, I have one more thing that I just want to comment on before we close the show. Mark, I don't want to cut you off, though. Do you have anything else for Bas before I say my 2 cents?
No, I'd love to hear your last question, Eric.
Oh, actually, it wasn't a question. It was a comment. Now, in modern society, in modern MMA, in modern just general everyday life, you don't get to see a guy like Bas, who has been so successful, who has been so grateful, who has had such a great journey, and also so good to his fans and just like people like me in general. Bas, how do you balance it all? How do you stay so approachable and not feel like you're giving too much of yourself, or is that just part of your personality?
It's really my personality. My wife tells me a lot of times, she says, you should spend a little bit more time on yourself. But when I get an email from a kid that gets bullied, or the father, mother email me and the kid get bullied, or the father, mother email me with the kids who have also eczema and thing, and what is the best thing to do. It's such a great feeling that you can actually say something and it has an effect. I had in interviews, I always say how much I like the book The Alchemist, and one of these readers, he was in a very bad moment of his life at the moment, and he said that he took the book The Alchemist and he read it, and it changed his life, and he's a painter. His name is Alejandro Costanon, and he wrote to me and he said, dude, the book changed my life. I got a whole different outview on life. I picked up his career. He's a great painter. Now he's showing his paintings everywhere. And what do you know? He sent me in a picture, and then I got this painting right now. We're still making we put the frame around it. But I mean, it's like a 4 feet high picture of my entire family, a painting. It's a really cool painting. It added a painting with Bruce Lee on it, and that kind of stuff makes it real good. So that's why I have no problem with giving time to the fans. And I will always also look at the fans. I really dislike these people. If sometimes I had that in the past, and I don't care if you're a famous guy. If I shake your hand and he decides to shake my hand, I think that he should look at you. I think that you should give him eye contact. You know, so with me, if you don't give me eye contact, I just keep holding your arm. I say, I'm over here, dude. You know, and then until they look, because I think it's such a disrespectful thing. So and that happened to me early in my career. And I thought, I will never do that. You know, I will always be open. As long as I have the time, I do it. And sometimes I say, you know, when people, you know, when they fire in questions, and I explain them before, I say, listen, I'm going to travel now. I'm going to be 3 days gone. It's going to be a red eye over right away into work. And so I'm not going to answer questions for a little bit then, but I give them a heads up if I don't answer. And that's pretty much the only thing I do on my Facebook and on my Twitter. Facebook, I post more, but on Twitter, it's like I'm answering questions for fans. If they want a question, most of the time they just ask and I answer them. And it's all me doing it. It's not like I have somebody working for me. It's just giving back to the great life that these fans gave me.
Well, I have to say it's very refreshing. And on that note, I'm going to kind of close the show. I do want to say thanks to Jack. He was the contact person who got me in contact with Bas. And since that happened, I have had many contacts with many industry insiders and fighters, and this one has definitely been one of the more pleasurable. So on that note, Mark, where can we find you over on Twitter so we can get you some followers?
At Last Word Mark at Twitter. I always follow back, so look forward to hearing from you all.
Okay, Leslie, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Leslie Smith MMA.
Okay, now your Twitter actually has a GF in there somewhere, though, doesn't it?
Okay, you're right. On Twitter, it's Leslie Smith _GF. Thanks for pointing that out. Appreciate it. Oh, actually, the very best thing for me would be if someone could follow me on Score.com. That's SQOR. I actually get paid for social media on there, and so that's wonderful if anyone wants to help me out by following me on there.
Absolutely. Follow Leslie Smith on Score. She gets a little bit of money from that. And Bas, not like you need a bigger following, but first off, where can we find you on Twitter? And second, where can we find the O2 Trainer?
Well, O2 Trainer, I also have people asking me, hey, where can I buy the O2 Trainer? I go, Google! O2 Trainer! Boom! It's a miracle! It's a miracle how that works. And otherwise, just O2Trainer.com. And on Twitter, it's Bas Rutten MMA, because Bas actually is a very common name in Holland. And there's another Bas Rutten, and I tried to get him, because he had also a website, and I said, listen, I'm going to promote the crap out of your website if you give me your name, Bas Rutten. You know, but he never reacted. So I figured, okay, do Bas Rutten MMA. On Facebook, it's also Facebook.com/Bas Rutten.
Okay, fantastic. And of course, a big thank you to Bas Rutten. And for everybody listening, you can go ahead and follow us at Stand in Bang Radio, the word stand, the letter N, the word bang, and radio over on Twitter, and MMA Press Row on Facebook. And please stay tuned for next week. We are going to have another MMA legend on, Rich Franklin.